Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Maxian on the Maxian position for Right to Offend Media, and today this is a bit of a different format, a different video, and a different topic. The one that seems as important now as it did a few years ago. E-celebrities, streamers, YouTubers, bloggers, rage pigs, podcasters, alpha males, pickup artists, TikTokers, influencers. God, I hate that one. You all know what I mean. These are people online bloviating about topics, presumably for entertainment purposes. That's all they are, myself included, dancing clowns. They may or may not have a talent. They may or may not be intelligent on a given subject. They may or may not have a wealth of experience or some unique insight. They may or may not be attractive, unlike myself, and they may or may not present well on camera, also unlike myself. And we may or may not find them entertaining, though some of us do, and that's enough. Enough for them to be graced and blessed enough to do the job, and if they're lucky, make some extra income with it. Or perhaps, if they're really lucky, even make it a full-time job. That's the actual arrangement, a sort of consumer-provider situation, but something odd comes out of it. And it's not always them, and it's not always their viewers who cause it, but it's this pseudo-relationship that seems to form, known as a parasocial relationship, technically. Some see it as a friendship or a romantic relationship even, a mentorship. It manifests in different ways, but in the end, one or both parties take this to heart. And yes, sometimes it is the content creators who take it to heart. They see themselves as a mentor. They see themselves as a father figure. We've all seen it. And in this case, we will mostly be talking about the e-celebrities themselves. I may touch on the other half of this, the viewer, later on in another video, but their involvement is marginal in what I'm talking about today. It varies case by case and is more often related to their own life and circumstances than the actual content or context of the e-celebs' actual influence over them. No, today let's talk about purity spirals. Self-proclaimed leaders, teachers, ministers, and influencers. The phases that they go through and how it relates to, or should relate to, your moral compass in the larger world. There's a cycle to the e-celebrity. Usually it starts with a slow grind where one gains views and notoriety slowly for a long period of time, and then a sharp rise to a larger audience. Perhaps you make a viral video. Perhaps you get shouted out by some larger creator. Perhaps you accomplish some notable feat. It could be many things, but the important note is going from relatively small growth to larger growth in a short period of time. This leads to what I call a so-called golden age for the e-celeb, the point at which they are growing constantly, making money usually, building influence more and more. This period could last a relatively short time or for many years. There's no definitive time scale. Oftentimes, when you look back on a content creator through the eyes of their viewers, the viewers will refer to the time of growth as their golden age, or the age that they remember of the content creator most fondly. It's then followed by the plateau. The plateau is where the growth has basically hit critical mass already. They won't gain followers because there are very few more to get for their particular niche, and their traffic and thus money has basically hit the point where they could go into autopilot, and many do. And as long as they don't screw it up, they can coast there forever, making a decent living, though with influence slowly ebbing and flowing over time. Many, however, choose another path, and that is the path of self-destruction. This happens when an e-celebrity starts to believe their own hype. They see their success as not only deserved, which in many cases it is, but as not enough. I'm important, don't you see? Instead of feeling blessed or lucky to make money, they become indignant. How dare you not give me more? Don't you understand I have bills to pay? I'm important. This manifests in many different forms, but For today, I want to address the form I am most familiar with, and by discussing it, you may also see ways to deal with it in other places. So, we're talking more about the political right wing podcaster, specifically, the kind who falls from their mountaintop. Why that happens and what we can learn from it. This is not to say that they're all inherently bad, and I know many of them do a great job, but let's call a spade, because a great recent example is one Jack Murphy. Jack was a writer, podcaster, talking head type. He ran a paid website for men called the Liminal Order and talked about faith, politics, and masculinity. He got on to a larger podcast, one run by a certain half-Asian bald man who's in the fall stage of this essay himself, but I digress, and back to the topic at hand. Jack talked about how to be a man, how to be a follower of Christ, and how to be a citizen of these United States, and people paid lots of money to hear from him how to do that. He became a sort of parasocial mentor for many men, and so when it came to light that he had sent his wife to have sex with other men and wrote a blog article about how much he enjoyed it, it came as a shock to many. When they brought it up, originally via super chat messages on the Elijah Schaefer show, he cussed out co-host Sydney Watson and said it was some kind of hit piece setup. Further problems arose for Jack when it came to light. He also made pornography of both the heterosexual and homosexual nature with his wife, solo, and potentially even others. And it was still online on some weird Russian pornography site, so people dug it up and made it very public. All of a sudden, his strong, faithful, conservative Christian man image had now been shattered by his own degenerate and immoral behavior. And instead of finding any humility at all, he lashed out at those who held his behavior up to the light. Flash forward just a couple months now, and he says if you don't forgive him, by which he means not call him out on his behavior, and give him money, you aren't a Christian. He, acting in his godlike capacity as an E-Celebrity, apparently decides what is and what is not moral, and what is and is not a Christian. He, you see, is a good man. He knows what's best for other men, and yes, he made mistakes, but he has forgiven himself, and thus you must also. Because in this man's mind, he is the judge of judges. He is the king of kings. That pride he is showing is counter, however, to his own narrative of being faithful. That much is obvious just from my reading of it here. Christ preached humility. He warned us of pride and its dangers, as so much of the scripture does. Christ, in his humility, died on the cross, allowing his own children to murder him. Not even to make a point, but to offer himself up as a sacrifice to save them from a fate they didn't even know of. Matthew 18 says, "At that time the disciples came to Jesus, saying, 'Who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?' And calling to him a child, he put him in the midst of them and said, 'Truly I say to you, unless you turn and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Whoever humbles himself like this child, he is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven.'" End quote. He didn't brag that it was him or his father. He did not say that the guy with the most subs, likes, and comments was the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. He didn't say the guy who has the most members of his secret men's group was the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. He didn't even say the guy with the most money. Yet here, I see this kind of story, maybe not as obviously over the top as Jack's story, but always the same over and over again. These E-Celebrities, they want to be influencers. They want to be leaders. They want to be political kingmakers, shot callers, moral authorities, mentors, and examples to live your life by. Yet very rarely do I see any who are even as moral as the average man, much less ones who should be ministering to other men how to live. Certainly, I try not to judge, but it's really hard when the people speaking the most publicly on virtue and morality and Christ are less moral than the average working class guy I know who doesn't even read scripture. Sure, he might have a few beers on Friday night. He might get angry sometimes, maybe even steals office supplies when times get tough. But he isn't putting out revenge porn. He's not abandoning his children. He's not going on homosexual dates with a cat boy on a live stream or selling his wife off to the highest bidder. He works harder than them. He makes less money than them. He treats his loved ones better than them, and he engages in less immoral, self-destructive, and degenerate behavior than them. And again, he is not among the most virtuous men around. Far from it. And usually he knows it. And yet, this man, the man who will take care of his wife and kids and works 40 hours to pay the rent, he doesn't get arrested, he doesn't make a mockery of himself online. He's giving his hard-earned money to stroke the ego of these false teachers, to maybe, just maybe, get a little attaboy out of them. How did we get here? I am certainly not the guy to be leading men on how to be virtuous. I am but a fallen, humble man like everyone else, trying to make my way through this life. I make mistakes. I have made mistakes in my past. I will make mistakes in my future. Interestingly, however, whenever these men are called out for their behavior, they lash out at their perceived enemies. They play the victim, and the God complex they held during their golden era turns into a Messiah martyr complex. The bad people are just out to destroy me, they say. Why address your failings as a man when you are important, God damn it? And their lashing out leads almost inevitably into a death spiral, into irrelevance, and perhaps a small audience of hanger-ons that will fuel their rage, paranoia, and depression. Sad. Call them out. Laugh at them. Don't be led by any idiot with a webcam and a microphone, present company assuredly included. Check out the stuff they say. Question it. These are not the leaders and ministers and father figures you're looking for, and even the best among them, I assure you, is none of that. Remember that at the end of the day, this is all just online entertainment, and it's a waste of time, and we, content creators, are all just dancing clowns. If you are a content creator, keep all this in mind. Do not forget humility. Remember that this can all come crashing down for any or no reason at all. Remember to take stock of what's important in life and appreciate what you have, even if you deserve it, because not everyone gets all the things they deserve in life all the time. Remember, when you make yourself a public figure, the public sort of owns you. And more than anything, I always like to remember that I am not perfect, and therefore fallen by nature as everyone else is. I make mistakes. I do things that I fall short of what I'm striving to achieve. None of this will sink in with people like this. They wouldn't listen to it anyhow, but it's worth saying out loud, even if only to myself. Don't become a rage pig, a goon, or a lolcow, though I'm not so sure these people can help it. If you aren't, and you're doing your thing, as many of them do, from the grind phase to the golden era to the plateau phase, just keep doing what you're doing. But remember, if you start the decline phase, try and humble yourself as a child. Let me know if you like the format. Trying to try different things over here at Right to Offend, Maxian position on Rumble, as well as now YouTube. I was sick for a bit, but new content should start flowing more frequently, and I am going to try different things until I find something that works. I humbly thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.